everyone. I hope you are doing well so far.
Today, we're talking about something that makes almost everyone nervous: getting your first job and those dreaded job interviews,
Oh man, just thinking about my first job interview still makes me sweat a little bit.
right? So, we thought it would be fun to share our own experiences and give you some practical tips that might help if you're job hunting in English.
Absolutely. So, Sarah, why don't you start? What was your very first job?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I was 16 and I really wanted to earn some pocket money for the summer. My first job was at a local ice cream shop.
Nice. That sounds like a fun first job.
It was actually pretty cool, but the interview, ugh, my goodness. I was so nervous that I showed up 30 minutes early and just sat in my car practicing what I was going to say over and over again.
30 minutes early. Wow.
I know, right? And the manager was this really friendly woman, probably in her 40s. And the first thing she asked me was, "So, why do you want to work here?" And I had this whole speech prepared about customer service and teamwork. But what came out of my mouth was, "I really like ice cream."
Wait, so you just sat there in your car for 30 minutes? What were you thinking about? Oh no, that's hilarious though. What did she say?
Oh, everything. I was rehearsing answers to questions they might ask, like, "Why should we hire you?" and "What are your weaknesses?" I had this whole notebook with potential questions I'd found online. But mostly I was just trying to calm my nerves and reminding myself that it was just scooping ice cream, not rocket science. She just started laughing and said, "Well, that's honest." And then she asked me if I was good with people, which was actually much easier to answer. Turns out, sometimes being genuine and a little nervous is better than trying to sound too perfect.
That's so relatable. I think we all overthink these things when we're starting out. So, what happened when you finally went in? That's such a good point. I mean, employers want to hire real people, not robots.
Exactly. And I got the job, by the way. What about you, David? What was your first job experience like?
Mine was, well, it was a disaster, but in a funny way. I was 17 and I applied to work at a bookstore. I love reading, so I thought it would be perfect,
Sounds like a great fit.
right? So I get there for the interview and I'm wearing my dad's tie, which was way too big for me. I looked like a kid playing dress up. The manager asked me about my experience with customer service, and I said I had none, but I was a fast learner.
Okay, that's honest.
Then she asked me to recommend the book. This should have been easy, right? I mean, I read all the time. But my mind went completely blank. I stood there for like 10 seconds just staring at her, and then I blurted out, "Have you read Harry Potter?"
Oh no. Well, I mean, Harry Potter is popular.
The thing is, this was like 2010, so Harry Potter had been out forever. Everyone had read it. She just looked at me and said, "Yes, David, yes, I have." And I could tell she was trying not to laugh.
Oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing. But did you get the job?
I did. She told me later that what impressed her wasn't my book recommendation, but the fact that I was willing to try, even when I was clearly nervous. She said a lot of people just say, "I don't know," and give up.
That's actually really encouraging. It shows that employers understand that people get nervous, especially for their first job. Oh, wow, that must have been so mortifying in the moment. What did you do after that awkward Harry Potter moment?
Exactly. And I think that's something our listeners should remember. Most interviewers, especially for entry level positions, they expect you to be nervous. They're not looking for perfection. Well, I realized I had to recover somehow, so I took a deep breath and said, "Actually, let me think of something more specific for your customers." And then I recommended this mystery series that I've been reading. I explained why I thought it would appeal to different age groups and how I could help customers find similar books. It was much better than my initial panic response.
Right, so let's talk about some practical tips for dealing with interview nerves. What's helped you in interviews since then, David? That's actually a great example of how to recover from a mistake in an interview. You didn't just give up, you took a moment and came back with a thoughtful answer. That probably impressed her more than if you'd gotten it right the first time.
Well, preparation is huge, but not the way I used to prepare. I used to try to memorize perfect answers, which just made exactly. And I think that's something our listeners should remember. Most interviewers, especially for entry level positions, they expect you to be nervous. They're not looking for perfection. Well, I realized I had to recover somehow, so I took a deep breath and said, actually, let me think of something more specific for your customers. And then I recommended this mystery series that I've been reading. I explained why I thought it would appeal to different age groups and how I could help customers find similar books. It was much better than my initial panic response.
Right, so let's talk about some practical tips for dealing with interview nerves. What's helped you in interviews since then, David? That's actually a great example of how to recover from a mistake in an interview. You didn't just give up, you took a moment and came back with a thoughtful answer. That probably impressed her more than if you'd gotten it right the first time.
Well, preparation is huge, but not the way I used to prepare. I used to try to memorize perfect answers, which just made me more anxious. Now I focus on understanding the company and thinking about real examples from my life that show my skills.
That's so much better than memorizing scripts.
Exactly. Like instead of memorizing, I'm a hard worker, I think of a specific time when I worked hard and what the result was. It makes the conversation feel more natural and gives me something concrete to talk about.
Yes, and another thing I've learned is that it's okay to take a moment to think before you answer. I used to think I had to respond immediately, but pausing for a few seconds to collect your thoughts actually makes you seem more thoughtful, not less prepared.
Oh, that's such a good point. And you can even say something like, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a second.
Right, it shows you're taking the question seriously. Now, for our English learners out there, let's talk about some specific challenges you might face and how to handle them.
That reminds me, maybe we should talk about some of the most common interview questions and how to approach them. Because while every interview is different, there are definitely some questions that come up again and again. Absolutely. First thing, don't apologize for your English unless you truly don't understand something. I've heard people start interviews by saying, sorry, my English isn't very good, and then they speak perfectly well for the next hour.
Oh, that's a great idea. So the big one that everyone gets is tell me about yourself. This one trips people up because it's so open-ended, but it's actually a great opportunity to set the tone for the whole interview. Yes, you're drawing attention to something that might not even be an issue. Instead, focus on your strengths and what you can offer.
Right, and the key is to keep it relevant to the job. Don't start with where you were born or your life story. Think of it as your elevator pitch, a brief summary of your background, what you're good at, and why you're interested in this particular role.
And if you don't understand a question, it's totally fine to ask for clarification. You can say, could you repeat that? Or could you rephrase the question? Professional interviewers appreciate when candidates ask for clarification rather than guessing.
And then there's what are your strengths and weaknesses? The strengths part is usually easier, but weaknesses, that's where people get really stressed. Before we wrap up, let's give our English learners some specific phrases they can use in interviews. David, what are some good ways to start answers to common questions?
Exactly. And here's something I wish someone had told me earlier. Practice talking about yourself out loud, not just in your head. Practice describing your background, your goals, your strengths. Even if you're alone in your room, practice saying these things out loud.
Great idea. For tell me about yourself, you might start with, I describe myself as, or my background is in. For strengths, you could say, one of my key strengths is, and then give a specific example. For questions about experience, try, in my previous role, or I've had the opportunity to. The trick with weaknesses is to be honest, but also show that you're working on improvement. Don't say something fake like, I work too hard, or I'm a perfectionist. Pick something real but not critical for the job, and explain what you're doing to get better at it.
And don't forget transition phrases to buy yourself thinking time. That's an interesting question, or let me tell you about a time when. These help you sound natural while you organize your thoughts. Also, could you give me an example of is a great way to ask for clarification if a question is unclear.
That's brilliant advice. It's so different when you actually hear yourself saying the words.
Exactly. And another one that comes up a lot is where do you see yourself in 5 years? This isn't about having your whole life planned out. They just want to know that you're thinking about your career and that this job fits into your goals. And remember, The interview is also your chance to ask questions about the company and the role. This shows you're genuinely interested, and it takes some pressure off you because you're not just being questioned the whole time.
Right. Good questions might be things like, what does a typical day look like in this role? Or what opportunities are there for learning and growth? These show you're thinking long term.
And one last thing, be yourself. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. Companies want to hire people they can work with every day. If you pretend to be someone you're not in the interview, it's not going to be sustainable if you get the job.
You know what? Let's also talk about what happens after the interview, because I think a lot of people forget that part. The interview doesn't end when you walk out the door. Absolutely. Plus, if you don't get a particular job, it might just mean it wasn't the right fit, and that's okay. There are other opportunities out there.
Oh, that's such a good point. The follow-up thank you email or note. It doesn't have to be long or fancy, but it shows professionalism and keeps you fresh in their memory. Plus, it gives you a chance to mention anything important you forgot to say during the interview.
So true. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Remember, everyone, interviews are nerve-wracking for almost everyone, native English speakers included. The key is preparation, authenticity, and remembering that the interviewer wants you to succeed. Right, and timing matters too. Send it within 24 hours of the interview while you're still fresh in their mind. Keep it brief. Thank them for their time, mention something specific you discussed to show you were paying attention, and reiterate your interest in the position.
Exactly. And if you mess up one question, it's not the end of the world. I got my first job after recommending Harry Potter, so there's hope for everyone.
And here's something else. If you don't get the job, it's okay to ask for feedback. Not every employer will give it, but some will, and it can be really valuable for improving your interview skills for next time.